Today we're going to go through Metasploit Fundamentals. Hopefully simple for those that have never used Metasploit before. Those that have used it before, it will be a refresher. So what is Metasploit? The framework supports multiple types of exploits. And now when I say multiple types of exploits, I mean different operating systems, different sort of services. So we support HTTP, Samba, so that would be SMB, DHCP. That you know what? There's an exploit for it. It's probably a Metasploit. What else is it? Tools for post-exploitation. So there are post-exploitation scripts. So once you've gotten into the system, there's scripts that allow you to enumerate. There's scripts that do for privilege escalation, and there's also scripts for forwarding into the rest of the network. So if this network's got a firewall on it, and you've managed to get a control of one host, you can forward all your attacks through that host and act as a mirror. And there's other auxiliary scripts too, so we can use the scripts that allow us to check versions of software, etc., etc. There's plenty of information in there. Why use Metasploit? It supports different exploit paths, so we can go through the typical, buffer overflow sort of vulnerability in software. We can generate our own payloads out of Metasploit, so then we can send it through a social and engineering attack. So it's got modules for post-exploitation. Again, like I said before, there's a lot of things that we can do with it. The post-exploitation also includes modules for enumerating the services. Decent handling of multiple sessions, and this is really important. So when you're doing a full corporate pen test sort of thing, you'll probably have multiple sessions on the go, so you'll have multiple hosts connected to it. Metasploit has handling in that through jobs and that sort of stuff to be able to handle all those sessions concurrently. You get the point, right? So how does it work? Loads exploits, loads payloads, loads post-exploitation scripts. Are you confused? I'm going to assume most of you are, so we're going to go through sort of stuff. How about I show you? So this is a home screen of Metasploit. Your results may vary. They do like to put in multiple different home screens. Loader exploits, we're going to, up there, configure the attack, IP addresses and everything with ports. Load the payload. There's a lot of payloads. So this is for Linux. So I'm going to set the payload, set IP address for the payload, run it, exploited, we have it. But how? I don't understand. I'm going to go through it in detail. Do not panic. That's why I went through that quickly. So let's roll back and show you some more of it. Metasploit. Nmap. So for those that have not used Nmap before, Nmap is used to find what hosts are on the network, as well as what sort of sys services they're running on it. It can be used to also fingerprint for the OS. Metasploit can be integrated with Nmap. It's a fantastic integration. It works very well. It allows us to for good data management. So when we're exporting an entire network of hosts, we can Nmap the entire network and be able to see what hosts we found, which service is running. It uses a database to store all the information. So how to enable it? We need to start the PostgreSQL SQL service, as well as start the Metasploit services so that it enables us to do it. So we can see that we're doing it up there. I will be posting these slides up for anybody that wants to see all the stuff going on here. Just to confirm that it is running, you do db_status, and it should come back with PostgreSQL connected to MSF3. Now in Metasploit you can create multiple workspaces, so they'd work as a separate sort of database inside the actual database itself that allow us to generate isolated areas for host storage. So if you're running across multiple sites, you generate multiple workspaces so you don't get your hosts all confused saying, oh, I hacked that host earlier but I'm on the wrong site, sort of thing. Running it. So this is us setting up just for a simple service scan. Do note that when you're running Metasploit and Nmap concurrently, so connected, it'll only be added to the database if there is services detected. So if there's no services detected, it won't actually be put into the database. So anything that's got full port filtering and that sort of stuff will not be inserted. It's designed so that when you search for exploits in Metasploit, they don't actually show up. So we can see the Nmap there is actually fully functional. We can see that it's detected a host. For those that are at home and want to set this up at home, I'm running Cobtrix level 1 in the background. So yes, so it's detected the host. So we can see success. It's actually appeared in our database. So we've got the IP address, the MAC address, the OS, Linux, OS of it, purpose, and then we've also got all the services associated with it. But you will notice that info is in fact blank. So all that Nmap's done is actually check the port and assume there's a service running on it. The next step from there is to do a targeted scan. So we have success, yes. We need to go deeper. So...
Wait, do you have the right picture for that?
Yes. Because when you're in a... No, this is the right one, because when you're in a CTF, and those that have been in the CTF, the flag is always a joke or something. So we need to dig deeper.
You're supposed to have the one from the movie.
Whatever. So we do DB Nmap -SN and then the actual IP address. So instead of running it across the network, we're actually doing a target on the host. Don't worry if you can't read it at the moment, because it also did appear in the database. So you can see now that it's updated the database. So it's now got all the info that it can pull from that scan. But we want more. So what now? Analysis of the data shows that services are running and on what ports. Searching these in Metasploit will reveal potential exploits. But which one? Are you pondering what I'm pondering? Metasploit scanners. I hope you were. So Metasploit has a huge amount of auxiliary modules that we can use. Some can even allow us to check versions of software. Yes, that's the word we're looking for. In this case, we're going to use one to check the version of Samba. So if I go back a bit more, so we can see here, there is in fact Samba running, but we don't have an actual version for it. So we're going to have a look for that. It's really important in this phase of your penetration testing, so when you're finding out information, to get as much information as you can, because it'll make your life a hell of a lot easier when you go through. And this is important when you do SCSC. For those that are here that are actually going to do it, it's important to have every bit of information you can get your hands on, because you might be missing something important. So we'll go back to here. So we're going to find a scanner. I like to point you guys up to the top here. So we're using search. So it's an Metasploit function. If you type in search and auxiliary scanner SMB, so Samba uses the SMB protocol. The way that it's actually the search function's laid out is that it's the type, so it's an exploit, auxiliary post payload sort of thing. The function, so scanner in this case. This is just for auxiliaries, and the protocol. So we're looking at, you can see there's a whole bunch of other scanners in there, but we're only looking for the version scanner, which is here. So we're going to load and configure that. I'd like to also point out that there is in fact R hosts. So this scanner is also designed to run across multiple servers. So we set it up, get the IP address. So you can actually type in hosts when you're actually configuring the payload, so you can see what the IP address is. There is also a way to pipe the entire table into the scanner. I haven't put it up there because we're only dealing with one host, so there's no necessary need to do that. And run it. And it comes back with a version of it. And the cool thing is, it's also in our table. So it is in fact updated the table with the version. Again, this table makes it so much easier to be able to go, what have I found? What information have I gathered so far? Now to up the prunage. With the info we have obtained, it is time to search for an exploit. Version numbers are important so we can find valid exploits. So it's important to know when your version of software that you're attempting to exploit was released, because when you see later, exploits also have a disclosure date. So if you get a version that's after that disclosure date, more than likely that exploit won't work anymore until it's been patched out. A bit of searching finds that this version of Samba was released in approximately 2001, that year, that date there. So searching the lists, so I point you up to the search function, so we search. So in this case, it's actually the operating system, and then what protocol, what service we're trying to exploit. We can see that it's got 4 that's come up. We've also got disclosure dates. So we're looking at something after 2001. They all are. The rank, So the rank dedicates to like how often this exploit will actually work. So if you have like a normal one, it's probably got a 50-50 chance of working. Great ones have recorded success of continuously working. And a bit of a description, so you can see like what roughly they're going to do. Configure and run. What if I told you already know how to do that? If I can get my slides to come up, I'll show you. We'll just quickly go through that because I probably went through it a bit too quickly. Configure the attack. All right, so we put in. So this is show options. So when you've loaded the exploit, so when you type in use and the exploit, you can type in show options, and it shows you what we have to set. So to set it, we can go set our host, the IP address is of what we're attacking, and it sets it for us. Recommendation: always type in show options before you run exploits, because if you haven't set it up correctly, it'll report back errors and you have to go back and troubleshoot, and it just makes a mess. You can load the payload. So we're searching for a payload. I'll go through what reverse TCP and bind TCP, the difference between those soon. Just to point it out as well, Interpreter is a custom built shell for Metasploit. It has got a huge amount of tools that you can actually use within it for the shell, so you can get shell access. You can do a whole lot of stuff with that. When you're doing exploitation, the preferred loading is to load a Meterpreter shell if you can. So load the payload, so we go set payload, we tell it what it is. I'm just using a shell in this case because all we need to do is just get root for this case. Configure the payload. Again, it's the same thing as when you're setting up the exploit, it's just that you have payload options down here. So our host down here again, etc. Run it. Metasploit will actually set up all the handlers for you, so it actually does all the connections handling and everything for you. And I'll go through into details on how that works later. So, and then it tells us, reports us that command shells 1's been opened. I'm going to go back to the rest of my slides. Where were we? And again, exploited. Very easy, very simple. But what now? We have the system. So I'll just show you in the previous one. I've typed in a couple of things. So who am I? I'm root. I've typed in ifconfig just to prove the fact that I'm on a different host. Hostname, Coptrix.level1. So we are actually on the other host. So we have got the system. So we're at root already. So we have root. We can cause a lot of damage to the system already, because with root access we can start deleting file systems, changing IP addresses, reconfiguring services, whatever the heck we want to do. Again, it can act as a platform for further attacks, so we can use this as a mirror into the rest of the network. Let's add some complexity. Yes, it's caused mischief because this sort of stuff you can actually do at home. It's very funny to do when you get access to your brother or sister's or family's computer. Payload generation and Metasploit. So Metasploit can also generate its payloads independently of Metasploit itself. So it means that you can generate these things and send it through social engineering attacks, etc., or other attacks. So in Coptrix level 2, you upload it into a web server and exploit it through that way. So they can be sent as external Metasploit. For example, so online chat programs, email, file shares, other exploits such as, remote command exploitation. Now, so MSF payload. This is for people that have seen my talk before. Generates payloads like the console. Supports multiple formats. I'll let you know now that I was actually in fact writing this slide before testing it. It's been patched out this year, so I lolled. So it's actually been replaced by MSF Venom. So MSF Venom combines MSF encode, MSF payload, and other tools into one. So MSF encode allows us to run encoding across the payload that we generate, and then from there allows us to sort of trick antiviruses and that sort of stuff so that they see it as like something completely different, because they usually run on signature base. Running MSF Venom, I'm not going to go into too much detail. There's a lot of things to cover for MSF Venom except for what's on the board. So we've got the payload, so -p, we're loading Windows Interpreter, reverse TCP, lhost, so I've set up another VM, just a Windows 7 VM. Doesn't need anything special on it. The file types, we're exporting it as an exe, and we're exporting into the file called assignment1.exe. We can see that it's just making assumptions because we've missed out a couple of flags. Saved as assignment1.exe. Setting up the transmission. So for this exploit, I decided that the victim was going to get it through a HTTP server. Python comes with its own simple HTTP server. Very handy tool. So I set it up, ran it, made sure that everything was working before I sent the message. So sending it to our victim. Hi Brad, here's a link to the HTTP server that contains a compilation of assignment 1. Kind regards. And an IP address in there. Hey look, it's sent. They clicked on the link and they got the assignment out of it. There's my next one. Alright, so we have a payload. Yes. You've sent it to the victim. Yes. Do you have a way of handling the return communication? Oops. I didn't configure it. So Metasploit has you back. There is a handler exploit that is built for this job. It doesn't host any exploits. Only the controls of the payloads. So we're going to go through and configure that up. So set payload. So we use exploit multi-handler. That's where it is. Set payload Windows interpreter reverse TCP. It connects to that. I go show options. So you can see here that the module options, there is absolutely nothing. But we can see that we've loaded all our payload options. And then we just go set the L host to ourselves because this is a reverse TCP. And then exploit. And it basically starts a payload handler. And that's all it does. So we wait for it to actually connect. So I can actually run the file. Metainterpreter session 1 opened. This shows up in Meterpreter. In Metasploit. We're actually mission accomplished. We are in. Any questions so far? Bit confusing? Am I perhaps covering it a bit fast? Oh, okay, I'll keep going. But what now? Post-exploitation. My favorite time. Metasploit supports a lot of post-exploitation modules. We're going to go through auto migration. It's the only one I'm going to go through today because there's too many to cover all at once. Auto migration instructs the payload to automatically create and migrate to a new process. It's very important when it comes to exploitation because you'll leave a CMD window running on the desktop or something like that and they'll go, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Or if you're exploiting through a service, Windows services, they have 30 seconds to respond or Windows will kill the process. So you need to be able to get out of there as quickly as possible. So we're going to configure it. We already have the handler set up, so I'm just going to use what we used before. All we need to do is enable the auto run script. Here's a command to do it. Set auto run script post Windows manage migrate. And then it confirms that we've actually done it. So auto migrate enabled. So once you go exploit, once it connects, it says it connects, running module against that, current server process, supporting notepad.exe process to migrate to, migrating to, so we migrated to that. It's a really important thing. So my recommendation from here is to download Metasploit, download Kelptrix, download maybe a Windows 7 VM and that sort of stuff, or set one up, have a play with it. It's really important just to fiddle with it until you get it working. There's so many more tools than what I've covered today. And cat tags. So DOSCat. DOSCat because it's sitting on the keyboard and stopping you from working. Any questions? No? Okay.
Why is your cat DOS?
I don't know. I don't have a cat. Okay, yeah, so with bind versus reverse TCP, if you have a firewall, it generally will not allow connections from the outside world through it. So that's a bind attack. Whereas a reverse TCP bind is basically the victim will connect to you instead. So that's more than likely allowed. So that's a thing of if you can't get through the firewall one way, you can come out the other way. So that's why you need a handler set up for that. Otherwise, it's got nowhere to connect to, and it will just die. Yeah, that's about it. Nothing else, I'm guessing.